Good evening, and the time is approximately 6:30. I am Jamel McKenzie, and I would like to welcome you to our special called meeting of the College Park Business and Industrial Development Authority. Today, again, is February 24th. At this time, I'd like to have each of our members just introduce yourself and then our staff that's on the call as well.
Good evening, City of College Park. I'm Celissa Jefferson, your Vice Chair for Ward 4.
Good evening, Anita Brown Cadis, Ward 3. You're on mute, Leslie.
You're on mute.
Sorry. Leslie Zen, BIDA at large.
Ken Allen, Mayor Pro Tem, Ward 3.
Marty Jones, Executive Director of Clearly College Park.
Sabretha Beasley, Administrative Assistant, Economic Development, and Assistant Secretary, Treasurer, BIDA.
Dan Lee, Attorney for BIDA.
All right, well, thank you all. Thank you for joining, and thank you for being in attendance at this special called meeting, which is really actually a workshop today session. We do have someone, I think, that's trying to get in, and hopefully we'll see who that is eventually. But I want to move on with the meeting. We do not have a approval of minutes at this meeting, being it's a special called meeting. Are there any additions, deletions, amendments, or changes to the agenda at this time that we should be aware of?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about, well, I guess it's three things, if we're going to meet in person, where we're going to meet, and, the food that we have. I'd rather not have a big full meal like in the past, but I just like to put that somewhere.
Okay. So are those the three things, or did you have anything else?
No, that just.
Okay, so those are your three things. So at this time, can we entertain a motion from the floor to, would someone like to motion that we actually discuss? Dan, do we need to vote on this, Dan? I just want to make sure before I go further that we're the addition to the meeting. Is that something that we need to vote on?
The agenda needs to be set at the beginning of the meeting by the full body.
So at this point, Councilman Allen wants to discuss, he wants to add something to the agenda discussion on meeting.
That's right, that's a motion, somebody seconds it.
Okay, so somebody like to motion that we do have a discussion on how we're going to conduct our meetings in the future.
I'd like to make a motion that we have a discussion about the meetings in person, where they're going to be, and if we're going to have food there or not.
Okay, would someone like to second that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Well, thank you, Celissa. And those that are in favor of—
Madam Chair, can I make a point of order?
Yes, sir.
I had a couple inquiries about the agenda and who sets the agenda and the dynamic of the chair and the other members. And I wanted to point out something. I mentioned this to you. The agenda, before the meeting starts, is a recommendation, and it comes from many places. I will have been working on something that we finished and give it to the executive director. He gets it in the agenda. Executive director and their staff working hard to get all the packets together. They get it together and get it on the agenda. But the agenda is decided, like everything else about BIDA, by a majority vote of BIDA. So and that's why at the beginning of every meeting, the agenda is up for approval. And it gives each member a chance to bring forth, like Councilman Allen just did, those items they want. And then if it's seconded, parliamentary procedures followed, and a majority vote is gained, and the agenda is set by the entire body, not one member, not one lawyer, not one staff member, but by the entire body. And that's a process I think we take for granted, but we lose sight of sometimes. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that for that, Dan. Member Zen?
Yeah, so I would like to have a discussion about maybe some policies regarding transparency on the board and the advisors of the board. If there's any business dealings with people that we are voting on, or if there's any benefit to advisors that are suggesting we take certain, approve certain deals, I think I would like to discuss that.
Okay, can let's move back to our first question, and then members, then we will come back. We still haven't voted on the first motion that was made, and
I apologize.
hold on to that. Don't let go of it, because I definitely want to, we're going to deal with that. So so let's go back to our motion that was placed on the floor by Councilman Allen regarding in-person meetings and discussing how we're going to proceed with food and whatnot. And I think we did have someone to second that. Was that Member Jefferson?
Yes.
Okay, so at this point, we've heard the motion. Those that are in favor, please say aye and raise your hand so we can see you.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that is unanimous. So that has passed. We will add that on to, I guess we'll add it on to items. Is that going to be under new business? It'll be item C. Okay. And members, then will you restate again what it was?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to discuss the BIDA policy regarding transparency of BIDA members and advisors regarding businesses that we are making decisions upon. If there's any side business being done with these entities, or if anyone is benefiting financially from the deal being taking place.
Okay.
Did we have discussion of this item, of this proposal?
I'm just wondering, is that something that can fall under our discussion on the role of the BIDA board, or is it something that we need
That's
to?
okay. If
Is that
that's
cool?
gonna be included in that, I'm cool with that.
Okay, so we will definitely, I think that's really great, and let's definitely delve into that as we get into that item. So that is going to be included. Then I guess we don't need to necessarily vote on that. So let's see. Did have a.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Anita.
Going back to Attorney Lee's point, my understanding is that the agenda for this meeting is sort of a beginning of our training discussions to address the issues raised during the retreat. And that because so many people were interested in the relationship of the BIDA board to the city council, practically everyone wanted to discuss that. But if we had more than 3 people who wanted to participate in that training or in that laying down of the question, we had to have a called meeting of the board. So am I correct in understanding that the agenda, the main agenda item for tonight is a discussion of that sort of first training issue that was identified during our retreat, that being relationship of the board to city council as a foundational issue for me anyway, moving forward. That's an aside. Could I get clarity on that, please?
Should I answer that, or Attorney Lee, do you want to?
I'm interested in others' understanding of why we're having this called meeting tonight.
I cannot answer it because I don't know what the
Okay.
expressed agenda for the meeting was.
Okay. So correct what you said, Dr. Anita, is that we were going to break into smaller groups to discuss the items, our goals from the strategic planning retreat. And we had all the members that responded to the email all wanted to discuss the same item, which would have taken us into a quorum. And so in order to have that discussion.
Madam Chair, excuse me for interrupting, I apologize, but I would believe that because this is a special call meeting, that somebody published a stated agenda for the public notice of it. And that would be the answer to Dr. Cadis's question, I believe.
Oh, okay. So
And it would alleviate my concern that was done.
Well, then I'm unclear about what you stated earlier, Dan, that, sorry. that an agenda is just a suggestion and that at the beginning of the meeting, we could add some more items to the agenda.
No, I stand by that.
Mhm.
But in a called meeting, which is different, there has to be a stated purpose for the meeting. And I think that's what Dr. Cadis was asking for. She was wanting clarity of what that stated original, the initial purpose was, if I read it right, Dr. Cadis.
Yeah, actually, I wanted confirmation of that. I was
Yeah.
clear about what it was. I wanted confirmation that.
Well,
'cause that was my
I don't know.
understanding.
I never saw it, so
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that. But I was suggesting to the chair lady that that would be the answer to the question, whatever that
Okay,
stated purpose was, would be added to what Member Zen said and what Councilman Allen added.
And it was published, right?
Yes.
to our knowledge,
Yes,
it's
It
published.
was.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina. And so what we see in our agenda, this is a special call meeting. We're not going to, that's why we're not going through all the different reports, the economic development. We've just come together for that purpose. But also what Dan Lee was letting us know, Attorney Lee was letting us know, is that at the beginning of a meeting, we not only have the ability to add to the agenda, we have the ability to delete items, make amendments or changes to the agenda. So what he's saying to us is that it's just a suggested, but at any given time, we as a board can say, oh, we're not discussing that tonight. Okay, or we want, just the way we add, we can subtract, we can amend, we can change. And so, but this particular meeting is specifically for the two items that are A and B, and we're going to add, because we're in a meeting, the item C. So if there aren't any additional additions, deletions, amendments, or changes to the agenda, I will move on to our first item of new business, which is 4A. Are there any other additions before I move on? Okay, well, thank you all. So at this time, this is open. This is an open discussion on the role of the BIDA board. And I think that what Member Zen, I don't know if we want to begin with what Member Zen mentioned, which was the policy of transparency and how we as a board handle outside influences. But
Could we get Dan Lee to just kind of summarize
okay.
how BIDA was set up and the function of BIDA before we even start the discussion?
Thank you. I yield to our Mayor Pro Tem at this time. Attorney Lee, can you do that for us?
I'd be glad to. Like all development authorities, it starts with a resolution, as did College Park, with a resolution of Mayor and Council asking the local delegation in the legislature to enact a local bill that would create a development authority. In this case, it asked for the creation of it, and it asked that a referendum be placed on the College Park ballot to ask the people of College Park if they wanted to amend the Georgia Constitution to add a place for a constitutional local authority. It passed the legislature, it was placed on the ballot, and it was voted in. So College Park has one of like 29 in the whole state constitutional authorities, and there are several distinctions with a constitutional authority as opposed to a statutory authority. There are a lot of statutory authorities out there. Constitutional authority is not subject to the changes of just the legislature because it has the seal of approval, if you will, of the people of College Park. It has special powers and privileges. The stated purpose in that legislation and in that referendum is common in this development for all development authorities, and that is to promote industry, trade, and employment. And that's what this authority has been doing for a long time. Part of that in the history of this authority has been to act as a conduit to allow for tax abatements. We have several of them where a building to be constructed would pay $450,000 in taxes, spread 60% to the school board, 20% to the county, 20% to the city. The city development authority takes ownership And instead of paying 450,000, they pay 300. I'm making up numbers now. 350,000 goes all to College Park. And generally College Park designates that stream of income to the borrowing of money to go pay something like the arena, go pay something like pay back the indebtedness for buying back property that the city of Atlanta has purchased for the glide paths around the city, much of which is now the 6 West properties. One interesting point I'd make here, when you create a development authority, the creation of it means something, obviously, as I mentioned, the difference between a constitutional authority versus statutory authority. But just like in all operations, government is no different. You have legislation, statutes, you have ordinances, then you have regulations, rules, in this case bylaws, and you have a standard and practice. In College Park, the creation of the authority, the standard and practice became that it was treated as a department of the city and for accounting purposes. And what I mean by that is the authority does not have an employee. The authority doesn't have any expenses. The accounting for the authority is what is recognized in the accounting world as a dependent department of the city. And I tell you this to talk about the operations of it. There's been some discussion about what is the BIDA budget? How do we set the BIDA budget? But technically, BIDA doesn't have a budget. If BIDA had a budget, it would have expenses for employees. It would have expenses for offices. It would have expenses for electricity. It would have expenses for the normal things that all agencies or businesses have. BIDA doesn't have that. BIDA is maintained by the city in its operation, so that if, let's say, the Gateway Center paid its annual pilot payment of $400 and whatever $1,000 it is, instead of going into BIDA into a revenue, and then it is used to offset within BIDA's books its expenses, it doesn't. It goes straight to the city to pay the designated debts that are attributed to it. So there's been some discussion about this in this question of what is BIDA's budget is answered not by rule number whatever 16, 17. It's answered by the standard and practice of how the books for BIDA are accounted for as a department of the city. And this lends itself greatly to the dynamic between the city council and the BIDA board. And you'll find that different all over the state. You know, the Fulton County has been in the news many, many times about how they get paid, and then how they do abatements, and people question abatements, and there's always a question about abatement by somebody. But they are autonomous in legislation and in standard and practice. They're not supplemented. And it varies all over the state how different ones are done. The one in Sandy Springs, a sister city to the north, is handled exactly like College Park. It doesn't have a budget per se. It is treated as a department of the city. And I hope that brings some clarity to the practical side of, you know, how much money do we have to spend? What do we owe? Whose debt is that? Intentionally so, over the history of BIDA and the city's relationship to BIDA, it has been handled to where it is a subpart of the city. And in my tenure, there's not been a complaint about the efficiency of that. And so that's the history of it.
And it falls underneath economic development, and that right, Artie? Doesn't it fall under your, okay.
So I have a question there. Because the redevelopment fund is a budget of the city, it's a clear P&L statement, collects revenues, account for expenses, let us know where our profitability lies. So to distinguish that and say that that is not a budget that is utilized for all of BIDA city-owned properties, I need to understand where that clarification is. Because we're clearly on one hand handling transactions of selling real estate and handling those expenses that are aligned with those transactions. And then, in addition to that, we're trying to obtain the highest and best use of the prices, to sell these parcels for its highest and best use to get the highest price that we can get for the city. So in itself, BIDA that's a fund of the city that we're utilizing for the redevelopment of the city, which is part of the commitment and bylaws of BIDA. So I need to understand why.
It's actually not
a budget.
It's actually not. It is a part of the budget of the city. BIDA technically does not have a budget. But if it had a budget in that section of the city's budget that you're referring to, you would find expenses for the operation that would be treated against BIDA's revenues, and you don't. That is truly a sub-budget, a sub-part of the city's budget. That's how it's historically been treated.
So we're pass through.
Excuse me. Okay, excuse me for a second. Let me just put a pin in this for a second. Who is on the iPhone? We need to know who's on the iPhone. We don't see your name. I don't see your face. Could you please introduce yourself? Everyone else that's in the meeting has done so. So who's on the iPhone? Okay. So I don't know what to do about that iPhone because we do.
You can't do anything. It's a public meeting.
Just leave it in there. It's okay that someone's, okay.
Has to
Okay.
be.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Okay, so now I just wanted to bring that up. So we can continue, and I know.
Well, I have a question in regards to, I know that it is a public meeting. Is it because, each person kind of introduced themselves and, but is it accounted for in the records of the telephone number or who, or who that is?
I don't know, but
it's not
a
a
requirement that it be.
So let me ask you this. So Aretha, when the email was sent out, was it sent out directly to the BIDA board members or was it sent out to the general public?
It was sent to the BIDA board members, council members, city manager, James Hammond, and Dan Lee.
Okay.
It wasn't published for the general public?
Yes, it was put on the doors as there would be a meeting tonight, a public meeting. We had to post it because there would be a quorum.
How
Okay.
about the Zoom? Was the Zoom information published as well?
No,
No, it just says virtual.
So I think Member Jefferson
Well,
was
how does the
right.
public have access to this meeting?
Through Facebook and
Right, Facebook Live and
James Hammond,
YouTube.
Okay.
James Hammond.
and James Hammond. So meaning
Okay.
those of us, we're actually panelists in the meeting right now. So that's why we wanted to know who that individual was.
And it doesn't show a number, it just says iPhone.
Yes.
It's an open meeting, so we continue.
I don't think it matters.
Okay, we're not in executive session. So Solicitor, I know that Anita has had her hand raised, and excuse me, I'm calling everybody from Anita, your name to the board member. So I want to solicit, did you have your question answered? I know Leslie had something as well, so.
And carry on, solicit, if I may say, because I think my question relates to some of the things that you're asking, so I don't mind.
Yes, Attorney Lee, he addressed it. I don't necessarily agree with that, because my clarification is we do have expenses related to BIDA transaction that we are voting on in our protocol and in our bylaws that's related to that fund of the redevelopment fund. Just because you do not have a specific position, we still do have transactional expenses that's related to what we are voting on. So there's a direct connection between the transactions that are transmitted through that fund and through the restructuring of the debt, which is why we need the sign off of the debt from the chairman of from the chairperson of BIDA. So therefore, I don't understand how that fund could not be considered the budget for BIDA, because that's what's being utilized to handle our transactional activity.
Well, the budget of the operation would be more than just the transactions. Each transaction has a budget. It does. It has expenses. It has the amount of money that is realized from the sale, and same way with every abatement. But it becomes part of the city's budget. It is not, BIDA does not have a budget. It is part of the city's budget.
So I guess the question, and I mean, I didn't want to really say anything on this, but so the question I have is that if BIDA doesn't, this is problematic because, you know, anytime if we as a board determine there's something that we'd like to do, we'd have BIDA do, we're told that there is no money in the budget. So what budget is there?
The city budget.
Right. So, but then if we never have the opportunity to include things, line items, or have in some type of impact in the creation of whatever's being, we will constantly be told every time there's something that we want to do that it's not in the budget. So, I mean, that doesn't have to be answered. That can just, it's just a little confusing because
You need to have your, the city's finance director here. She's very capable and knows the answers to these questions, but I would submit to you, and you asked me about a historic review of what has gone on. It has never been a problem before.
So may I interject here that, because that, you know, let's call that a rhetorical question, because it does relate to the history and what's worked in the past and what hasn't worked in the past. So if that's what's happened, what have been the pros and cons of that, without delving into, okay, when we want to do something, how do we find the money for it, and call it a budget or call it a financial plan for the year or forecast? How does BIDA organize itself in its activities vis-a-vis city council? When, you know, we're charged with doing certain things, we don't have a budget, but we clearly have access to funds, and we spend funds and we receive funds to do certain things. So historically it's worked. How has it worked, and what have been the snags? And you may not have the historical memory as either. I mean, I certainly don't, but what have been the problems with that, and what have been the pluses of that, so that we can know moving forward how to make it work and overcome any problems?
Again, I think you need the city's finance director here who knows this backwards and forward. Artie could probably add something to it, but I would suggest to you that I've not experienced a problem with it. I've not seen one. You know, the issues in the past dealing with what BIDA is to do, or what its mission statement would be, has never changed. It has always been the same.
It's just a pass through then? I mean,
that's the way it's been.
let's let, I'm gonna let Zen, will you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this brings us to the bigger question in my mind, which is, you know, are we just a rubber stamp for the city council? So in the past, I think that this budget that you're talking about, really, we have free will to buy land that city council or whomever, you know, the economic development team has said, hey, we need this land. We vote on it, we buy the land. Hey, we want to sell this land. We vote on it, we sell the land, and we have those funds and the approval to do that. The only issue I can think of that's come up in the 2 years that I've been on is around the party. And 3 years ago, before I was on BIDA, when the city had money pre-COVID, they threw a huge party. It is up to the city's budget if they can do that. That's what my understanding. And then, you know, when COVID hit and there is no budget, then it was again up to the city to say there's no budget. We don't have money for this. So, but the bigger question begs to be, are we simply chosen by the council to approve what they have already approved?
Is that a question? to
That's a
me, or is that
question.
is that
You know, I think
rhetorical?
this is what, you know, well, it's a question in my mind, you know, we were brought a budget, a refinancing of the bonds. And to me, it was like, hey, this is a done deal. You know, we've already decided this is what needs to happen. Now we just need your stamp of approval, because my understanding that BIDA came into existence because the city cannot take on debt. Is that correct, Dan?
No, they can, but it's a lot easier to do it through BIDA.
Okay, and that secondly, any decision that needed to be made without BIDA would need a vote for the entire constituents of the city. So this bypasses needing to have, you know, residents vote on every single deal.
To some degree, that's accurate.
Okay.
Intervene. I just spoke to Althea Bradley, the finance director. She said that the clarification, what Dan is trying to say is that the BIDA fund has a budget. The BIDA fund, which is responsible for all the transactions, all the money that's coming and going, does have a budget. As far as the BIDA board does not have a budget. The BIDA board works at the will of the city council who appointed them, and they go about the business of approving and, you know, making decisions as far as acquisition, sales, and abatements and things of that nature. So the BIDA fund, which is that huge number that you see, that budget of all those funds coming in and out from all the hotels and all the deals, that there is a BIDA fund budget, but there is not a BIDA budget for the board itself.
So where's the coherence then? I mean, so what happens in that process that Leslie was talking about? Does council consider the acquisition and sale of every property considered by BIDA? What input is typically given or exchanged between the city council and BIDA? You know, bottom line up front, are we a rubber stamp? I don't get the sense that we are, but if we don't know the process of what, you know, what's step by step, what happens as this decision gets made, then I don't know how to make a decision or cast a vote.
But go back to what I mentioned to you a minute ago, the difference between the statute, the statutory
Correct.
action, and then versus what the practice is.
And that was another question of mine. Thank you.
I would submit to you that statutorily, you are not a rubber stamp. In practice, you are not a rubber stamp, because I believe that the council, although everything is run by them, as a cooperative, this is the way I view it now, as a cooperative effort. And, you know, I don't know historically how many things y'all have said no to and they said yes, or vice versa. I don't, it has happened, I know for a fact, but it's more of the process and the practice, to me, of how you all work toward the benefit of College Park. It's not this is my autonomy, that's your autonomy. There's not a debate there. And back to the question about the budget, I don't remember, this is just anecdotal, I don't remember any question coming up about the budget up until this year.
So what is the shared vision of the city of College Park and everybody else?
You know, Dr. Caddis, there's a rule, and it's been around for about 150 years. There's a rule about making law, and it's a good one. It's an old Supreme Court case, and it was written by an old Supreme Court justice who they were trying to determine what the intent of a law was. And so what the intent of a rule is. what the intent of a change in a rule is, the first thing you got to identify, what is the evil, what is the wrong that you're trying to correct. So if you don't like the standard in practice, then you got to identify what is wrong that you want, that needs changing before you set about constructing the change. And I would submit to you that'd be my first question. What is wrong that you want to change? And then figure out what that construct looks like.
Yes, I concur there. I think that when BIDA had the strategic planning meeting, I think that that was created to create our overall overview of goals. And I think with this special call meeting is to create the objectives of those goals, to create timelines, to create protocol, and to define what the internal control is. So I think that although it may have been practiced previous boards appointing, that things may have been done a certain way, that does not necessarily mean that it has to stay that way. Through time, there's evolution. And through evolution, there's growth and there's always change. And so we have to accept that we have a very knowledgeable and forthcoming and strong-willed board members, and that we may ask questions, and we expect the due diligence of those questions to, be fulfilled. And so I think that with this special quote meeting, us discussing and defining the terms of the redevelopment fund and how those transactions flow through that fund, and how we as BIDA control necessarily those transactions, because we're voting on how those transactions are going to take place. But in regards to also that, within our bylaws, we're required to have training. So when it comes to developing an internal control or protocol to continue our continuing education training through BIDA, that needs to be established. And when we need this training, what is the protocol from our director? How do we establish the allocation through the redevelopment fund that we have the necessary training funds built in? How do we establish, as Councilman Allen, our Mayor Pro Temp, explained, we don't need trainers? How do we downsize that? How do we streamline that part of the portion in that fund, or in the, within that budget, within the city? So I think these to redefine and to establish in this meeting, those are the issues that you discuss, Attorney Lee, that are the evils that we want to correct. Because maybe in the past, it's just been a cultural that people have utilized at a convenience. Well, now we're trying to establish protocols and internal. And I think that it should be disclosed, and we should have an opportunity to define how we.
I want to say I've been on the board since 2019. I think Attorney Lee may have started the same year or a year before me, around that time. So when we first started, back in those days, we didn't have COVID. So, and that's where, I know Attorney Lee mentioned that he hadn't heard any discussion of budget, but distinctly in 2019, we actually used to receive reports from the finance director on where we were in terms of our finances. And COVID hit and we didn't get any reports. So we were being informed before about how monies were being spent, where we were in terms of what the debt looked like. And then, of course, as a new board member, I was encouraged by Tasha Hall Garrison to take as much training as I can. And I tell you, I took every single class. We were even looking about flying me across the country. I took every single thing I could take in terms of training from the regular developmental authority at UGA, but there was a budget. I mean, that's where I guess there was a budget, because there was nothing that I asked for that I
It was the city's budget, though. It wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just explaining, I guess what I'm just explaining is that there has been a change. And so, and I realize that a lot of that is because of COVID and what the city has experienced, but we didn't have that understanding. See, and that's what we're trying to get. What I'm hearing and what I'm hearing board members say is we want to get this, we want to understand what you told us today, Attorney Lee, which was really good to help us to clarify some of these things that we don't understand. And so
Well, just to be clear though, Madam Chairman.
Yes,
is
sir.
that it hadn't, what changed was not the presentation, but when COVID hit, the city suffered great losses. And so the city's budget that may have allotted for this trip, that deal, that engagement had to be cut.
Right.
Not BIDA's budget.
Not only for
It was
BIDA,
what the
but
city had
But across
allocated.
the board. Yeah, and that is,
We understand that.
yeah, and that's what I'm
Okay.
saying. I understand that, but the
Okay, I
point
just
I'm
want to make clear,
making,
at least, it sounded almost like you thought there had been a BIDA budget. Now there's not one, but there's
well,
been
we as members of the board, we didn't know there was a difference. We didn't really, we hadn't, you know, we've been being told, Attorney Lee, that BIDA is in all of this debt when we know that BIDA is not in debt. It's the city that's in debt. So it hasn't been
Well,
clear to us.
I apologize for interrupting you, but to get
Okay.
clarity on this,
Okay,
if you are a subset of the city, it's not the city's debt or your debt, it's y'all's debt. And I hear this all the time. And to be clear about it, this is a cooperative effort. And I still don't know, and then I'm not the one to make you say, but I would submit to you if you need to say why that matters, because it hasn't mattered until now in my tenure. But and I'm not telling you that you can't change it. I'm just saying that there's a lot of history, a lot of standard and practice, a lot of accounting that would have to go on in order to upset the way this has been done. And the first thing I would task you with is declaring what's wrong that you want to fix.
And I'm not saying that we're not saying that anything is wrong necessarily. What we're saying is, what is the shared vision? We're all in this together. How do we get out of it? And so I don't think we're saying that something is wrong. We're asking what is, not what's wrong. How do we make it better? If we have a shared vision about, okay, College Park needs to do this, that, and the other, how do we work together to make that happen? And I'm not feeling that interaction. Certainly part of it is we don't sit around the table and talk. And, you know, there was as I understand it, Mayor Pro Tem Allen, there was a board, there's a board that meets every 5 years, not a board, it's a committee that meets every 5 years to sort of map out the shared vision for the city. And it's advisory. I'd like to see the report of that group so that we kind of get a sense, you know, we know 6 West, we had a wonderful tour today, but in terms of the whole of College Park, especially vis-a-vis Hapeville, East Point, South Fulton City, Clayton County, where do we fit in and what can we offer uniquely that makes this a whole that's gonna move forward just like Sandy Springs and Alpharetta and Roswell. But I don't have that vision, in part because I don't know what city council is thinking.
Well, let me,
maybe Artie can come in and tell us how things process through the city council. We hear everyone, how they're processed through, and you want to go into that.
yeah, I had my hand raised for a while. It's a brown hand, so you probably don't see it.
oh my gosh, I didn't see it already. I'm
Right
sorry,
there.
I apologize. I
Yeah,
truly, I was not ignoring you. I apologize.
No
I didn't
problem.
see it.
But when I first started working for the city of College Park, the Development Authority, we had, you know, a lot more money to work with. Due to COVID, we don't have a whole lot of money to work with. So what we've done is we have cut back significantly so that the city can continue to operate in the black, which is what I would hope that the citizens of the city would like to have. Now, as far as training is concerned, I don't care what the training is, know that the Department of Economic Development or the Development Authority, the hats that I wear, both hats, has never turned down any training that anybody wants to go to. Now, if you want to go on a trip for some convention or conference or something like that, by the board, staff don't even go on those things because we are not in a situation to pay for it right now, period. And we have to look at the benefit. If there is a benefit to doing it, if there is some kind of connection that's going to be made with a business or something like that, that's one thing. But as far as training is concerned, there's not one by the board member that's on this call today or on the College Park Business and Industrial Development Authority that has been turned down for any type of training, whether it's virtual or in person. Now, when it comes down to conventions and things of that nature, we plan for the BIDA board members to go to attend a convention on an annual basis. This last year, we actually had planned to do it virtually, but there was a person that actually went in person, and instead of paying $150 for the convention, we paid we're right at about $1,600 for that one person. So the question that had been posed was, oh, I thought there was money left over from the travel. Well, no, actually it wasn't. We just let that one person go. Even in the email that I put out to the BIDA board members, I said, I would recommend that you attend virtually. And I put out the amount for the virtual and I put out the amount for the in-person, and there was only one person that decided to go, like I said, in person. And initially there was two people that decided to go in person, but another person backed out. So if the BIDA board members would like to, I guess, communicate something to me where there's a void as far as trainings, please let me know, because I don't want to be the reason that anyone doesn't go to a particular training. I think that we put it out at least 3 to 4 times a year when trainings are going on, that you can actually go to trainings and learn how to better to do what it is that BIDA board members do. And it's not necessarily what's in black and white in our bylaws, but actually networking with other BIDA board members that are in other communities. You can see some of the projects and things that they're doing. Dr. Cadis or Anita Cadis, you were talking about, what is the vision for the Development Authority? Well, our last strategic planning session, if you remember the title on that strategic planning session, it says, I believe the title was trying to make a plan to, trying to plan a strategy, something to that nature. Basically, we need another strategic plan to really get into the nuts and bolts of what our goal is as a development authority. Right now, I guess during our last strategic plan, we sat down together, and although it was productive, we were still kind of at square one, and we were starting to figure out, well, what is the relationship between mayor and council and the BIDA board? And then from that point, to continue to develop it and move on and do bigger and better things. What's East Point doing? Hapeville, I really don't look to them. I feel that College Park should be the best College Park that we can be, and not be what other communities are trying to be. And at the same time, I feel that a lot of those communities do envy what College Park has, the things that we do. But if there are any questions about training, please address me about them, and we can, I'll work those into the budget. But as far as, just going out and traveling just to do it, that has been cut out for everybody. And, as things get better, of course, we will, adjust accordingly, and, move from that point.
Okay, I want to acknowledge board member Cadis, but also in terms of training, let us table any discussion that has to do with BIDA training for our next agenda item. And let's stick to what we are discussing here, the role of the BIDA board. So board member Cadis.
And let me be clear that when I talked about a vision, I talked about a vision for the growth and development of College Park, not for the board. So let me be clear that, we've got a lot of things that we could do, what's the most strategic thing to do to meet the goals of the city of College Park, not the BIDA board.
Thank you. And board member Zen?
So my feeling about, I don't feel like I'm a rubber stamp. I feel like I was chosen to make my best decision. And I guess the people that place us on the board, if they don't like our decisions, when it comes time to change the people, they'll change the people on the board. And, you know, I don't want to keep, you know, going on around and around. That's just where I am on it. I think that, you know, we all should be, our goal is to make College Park the best place that it can be. It's a diamond in the rough. I didn't go on the tour this morning, but yesterday and today I do run in that area, and I noticed that there's huge streets that have been cleared out, and it's super dang exciting. If I were a developer, I would come here, honestly. I think that, so, you know, I feel like sometimes we just get bogged down in really things that don't need so much time.
Artie, can you, and I hate to jump, I should have raised my hand, I'm sorry, but Artie, can you go through and explain to everybody when you get a proposal or somebody wanting to buy some property,
Yes.
how that works, how you go through and how it goes to council, and council reviews it, then it goes to BIDA, how that timeline, or not a timeline,
Yeah,
but how the
yeah.
process works.
That's real good. That's a fair question, and thank you for giving me that opportunity. A developer approaches me. They want to acquire a piece of property. They want to put a project in the city of College Park. So I asked them for a letter of intent. And the letter of intent, I want to have on it, what is the property want to purchase? How much are they going to purchase it for? What do they plan to develop it as? So that I can kind of weed through it to let them know, okay, we're not going to be interested in that. Or if they insist in submitting it anyway, I'll accept it. Once I get that, I go to the city council and I said, are you guys just interested in this project? I'm not asking them what color the paint needs to be on the building. I'm not asking them how many acres should the person purchase. I'm not asking them what is the project going to look like, but I asked them, are they interested in this project? Are they interested in this medical office building that will be somewhere between 10 and 15,000 square feet that may employ 35 to 50 people? They'll say, yeah, we're interested in it. We're interested in it. So at that time, I take that project, I go back to the developer again. I said, could you provide me more detailed information now? Could you provide me with, you know, what will be the impact to the city? What is the approximate value of this project after build out? How do you plan on using local, who's the owner of this company? What is the background of this company? Who are going to be the owners of this particular project? I get that information, I package it up, I get the letter of intent, I submit that to the Business and Industrial Development Authority board. When I present it to you guys, I try to be more specific than I was initially with the city council and trying to narrow down exactly where the building is going to be, kind of what it might look like, give information on the background of the organization so that the BIDA board can feel like they know the organization or the people that are going to own this project or develop this project. And then you guys say, okay, I like it, but I'm not too sure about this. So we will go back. I said, okay, well, if that's the case, you're interested in it. All I have to do is tweak this. I go back to the organization. I get them to tweak the project. I work with Dan Lee to draft a purchase and sales agreement for that particular project on whatever that amount that was agreed upon by the board. And we get it all packaged up and we bring it back by the board to authorize the chairman to execute the contract. And once that is done, then, you know, we're kind of off to the races and the property is under contract. It's in this due diligence period where we have to get all the proper zonings in place. They test to make sure the site doesn't have any environmental issues. They they tighten up the site plan. We go back in and we negotiate and tighten up as far as the reconveyance clause and exactly what specifically, hopefully they have it narrowed down as far as the type of project they're going to do and the size, and then we close on that property. That's the process. The mayor and council don't ever vote on the particular project. I just take it to them to see if they have interest in the project moving forward. Even before I take it to the mayor and council, I run the project past the planning, the city planner also. If there's something specific that I think that might be somewhat questionable, I might reach out to the infrastructure director for the city to ask him about the project. I might reach out to the power department, the power director, and ask him, you know, how much power do you think this thing might use? And would it be good for the city? I'll reach out to Ed Wall. I said, okay, Ed, it's going to have this much of a value after it's fully developed. What would be the tax revenue benefits to the city of College Park after this project is developed? To try to get to see if this project is worth, is the best project for the property. So that is the process. Councilman Allen, is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, and when Artie brings it to councils, sometimes we go to him and say, hey, we've got a couple of questions we want you to straighten out and talk with him a little bit. We want to check on this, we want to check on that, and he'll do that and then bring it back to us before it goes. And we say, yes, that's a good project. Take it to BIDA and let them take a look at it.
So is it possible that we can establish a protocol? One of the goals that I had as my goal is to how a developer presents to us in order to review and vote on. So if possible, we can create a format where the package can include a verification of funds letter. The package can visual site plan to show how the project is going to be. A timeline and also a status report where that project is. For instance, if a company hasn't closed on a that we have voted on, but they're bringing a new contract in, us understanding the previous contract and why they weren't able to successfully close on that before bringing in a new contract. So if we can establish a status report in a form, the way developers present their LOIs to us or the purchase and sell agreements thus forth, so that we'll have a clear understanding project looks, what it'll be utilized for, and its impact on the community.
May I offer a different perspective? And I think that's what makes us a good board. That's way too much detail for me. And although I respect that what makes us a good board is that we all bring different levels of interest, to me, that sounds like, number one, I wouldn't understand it. And number two, that's why we have Artie and other people to vet. I want to go back to what council determines. Dan, you talked about industry, trade, and employment. So one of the templates I would probably want to apply to someone who came with us with an idea is this going to be good for, is this industry something that fits in College Park? Is it going to bring us jobs? Is it going to increase trade without overburdening the infrastructure and the transportation? Does it contribute to what we want other people to see College Park as being, sort of the gateway to Atlanta and the gateway to the world? I'm sure we wouldn't want to build a nuclear power plant right in downtown. So what's the overall concept, and does it fit? And then if you can implement it, great. That's not for us to decide, but what's our vision of College Park as a place to work, to play, to live? And does this particular idea sustain that, our identity as it's growing into the next century? And sometimes I don't even know what that is. Yeah. I mean, to be quite frank with you, I see Woodward having lots of land, but they're certainly not going to open a junior college at this point. So why? What is that about? They're not even this is just me. I could reveal all of my personal feelings, but I won't. But I just really do not know where is College Park going, and I'll rest. I could ramble on, but I won't.
Let me address that question for you, Miss Anita. As a person that is in real estate, if a letter of intent is brought to me, it is my responsibility, regardless of how it happens to be. I can ask for a certain format. I could ask for it 5-6 times. If they don't give me the correct format, eventually you just have to I have to take that letter of intent and I have to present it to the council. I have presented, I would say, probably 50% of the LOIs that I present to the city council, I probably don't have any faith in. But I provide my recommendation if asked. I try not to sway a group one way or the other. I put the contract out in front of you, and I tell you the things that I feel that are factual. Of course, is everything in writing the truth? No, I've seen plenty of resumes where people have looked like they were on top of things, and when you talk to them, they're garbage. So with the letters of intent that I receive, and from the recommendations that I make, all those things that Celissa was talking about, as far as, and also Ms. Cadis, making sure that there's, it's good for the community, making sure it's not going to be a nuclear power plant in the middle of downtown, just certain things. I try to make sure that doesn't happen. Believe it or not, where 6 West fits right now, our mixed use development, the project that was the hot project that people wanted to put there was 2 million square foot warehouse buildings for a major distributing company. And I'm not even going to give the name, but that was the project that they wanted to put there. I knew that we didn't want semi-tractor trailers, on our roads, by our historic neighborhoods, right by our golf course, off of Camp Creek. I knew that. They brought that LOI to me. I took it to the city council, even though I discouraged them that we weren't interested in it. It wasn't even zoned for that. That's before we even had a redevelopment plan in that area. Of course, mayor and council shut it down. They weren't interested in it. So it's for me to screen out most of the bad ones, but there are going to be bad ones that come through. Just because I'm presenting it to you doesn't necessarily mean that I'm in favor of it. It's that I have to provide it to you. Just like, Celissa, if you are representing somebody and you are selling real estate for them and you're a broker, you have to present them the offer. You let them shut it down. They ask you, well, how do you feel about it? Then you tell them the truth, and then they make a decision from there. That's what I do also.
I can tell you that when Artie does a fantastic job of bringing us the information, does a lot of research, and we still have questions. What about the traffic flow? What's this going to do to Camp Creek? What's this going to do to Roosevelt Highway? Can we put trucks here? No, the truck can't go there. If they're interested, they're going to have to turn the trucks and come out on a different road. They're going to have their entrance over here. How are we going? So we do an awful lot of working with Artie and send him back before he comes back to us again with some of these. So I think we probably, and those are all discussed in executive session, which we really cannot talk about because if the word gets out there, then a lot of things can happen. So we need to make, and again, I'm just talking for myself, probably make it clearer to the BIDA board what we're interested in, what we're not interested in, where we see the city going, what we like to have, or I guess, Dan, if you want to jump in there, am I getting way out of it or?
No, you're not. You're right on point. I was going to make a point. I try to find an analogy that everyone can appreciate it. I would submit to you, this goes on all over the state. And sometimes when you think there's a debate within your group, that it's unique, and it's not. This goes on all over the state, but generally, when a development comes to a town, they want to buy that guy's property, and they want to put this thing here, and they want this kind of incentive. And the development authority is in the business of being the conduit to provide the incentive, like an abatement. And it's different here. And this, I think you need to look at this analogy. Most of the development that we are seeing is to go on property owned by BIDA. So not just the dynamic of you're the authority created by the legislature, the city council, the legislature, and the people of College Park. You're the property owner. But in the discussion about who has autonomy and how do we get to do our own thing, and we don't have to listen to the mayor and council. Never forget, the mayor and council are your banker for the purchase of that property. So it's right and proper, I would submit to you, to have that cooperative discussion about what goes on that property versus other development authorities around the state, where you're sitting over here waiting to be maybe the entity to provide incentives. In this case, with the vision of the city council and the vision of BIDA boards previous to you, you've gone out and bought this property back, gotten control back from Atlanta, like 6 West, like some of the properties downtown that we've been fussing about. It's a good thing. You have double control over it. So you need to revel in that cooperative effort and ability to decide what goes there. And I would submit to you, because I see it other places. They don't have that control. It's a bad thing. This is a good thing.
And I concur with that. Protocol.
Member Zen had her hand raised, but if you want to.
Sorry, I apologize. That I agree with
that.
Go
ahead and respond. You do your respond, then I'll have.
Protocol that plays for all the LOIs to go before council and they sign off. It only comes their sign off. That is excellent. What I'm speaking to is if there were to have a format template to have the developers, when they come before opportunity to engage and speak to us about their project. That's all I'm saying. I'm not
horse's mouth kind of thing.
That the protocol of a sign off gets changed. No, we need that. We need economic development to vet it, mayor and council to sign off on it, and to BIDA to vote on it. But I was just saying there are a lot of pages that comes within our packages for us to read, and it would be advantageous if the developer had a summary template to show us their project, us through their expectations, to utilize the project for. That's all I'm saying.
Leslie?
Yeah, so the only thing, I think that the easiest way to look at our role is it's either us voting or it's the entire city voting. So it is kind of a checks and balance. We've been put on this board to express our opinion.
You're talking about debt. That's what you're talking about. You're not talking about the sale of property.
No, I'm talking about any deal that we vote on. You're saying that the residents wouldn't have to be, they would only be involved in debt?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I would still pass the same analogy along, that, I hate to think that I've been selected to be on a board just to rubber stamp what city council says.
Leslie, did you want to still bring up the topic that you had earlier that we were adding to?
I would.
Because this may be a good time to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would like there to be a policy in place that if anyone on the board or advising the board has any interaction or relationship with people coming before us, or is going to benefit from the deal, it should be disclosed to the rest of the board members. So for example, I recused myself. I forget what the deal is, but the people that wanted to have first right of refusal of that electric building on Harvard. And I recused because I own the building next door. You know, I think that there was another deal. There was that golf deal. I knew one of the guys in that deal. It never came up for a vote, so I never disclosed it. But I was like, oh, wow, there's Leonte. I know him, you know. I think that if you know someone or you have any sort of relationship with them, you don't maybe have to recuse yourself, but I think that you should disclose that you have a relationship of some sort with those people. And I personally, yeah.
That's admirable, and I agree with it. I will tell you there are a couple of levels of standard that are in play here. The legal standard of a conflict of interest is whether or not you have a monetary interest in it. Period. In story, or a familial, a family member that is involved in it. And the law even spells out what level of family that could be. Second cousin doesn't apply. Now, the first rule, believe it or not, the canons of ethics for the bar is that you must avoid the appearance of impropriety. And I've always said, if you do that first one, you don't have to worry about the rest of them. It takes care of all of them. Do you have a financial interest in it? Is the difference. Then I know Joe, he's my best friend. I couldn't decide to vote against him. I'd be two presidents. That's a personal thing that you need to exercise. No question about it. And I'm going to take a moment of personal comment here. There was an alleged letter read at the last city council meeting questioning my ethical advice and ethical decision to Councilman Allen. And I don't necessarily take offense if somebody questioned my advice, but I do take offense at them when they take out after the one who got the advice, who disclosed his membership, and they use my opinion to do it. It's just not accurate. Many of you, like me, take your church membership seriously, and that's something that you decide. The law says it is not a conflict of interest, but Leslie makes a good point. There are times when it is a conflict. Now, disclosing some things is important. If I did business with Joe, and Joe winds up showing up at BIDA to do business, I'm different than all of y'all because I'm a lawyer. I got a license that puts a requirement on me. I have a duty to tell you, wait a minute, I've done business with Joe before. I don't have financial interest in what he does now, but I've done business with him before. That's different than if I know something like who you're going to do business with, and I go and find them and try to do business with them. That's wrong on any level. And again, I'm looking at the two different standards. Leslie's right. It's a personal matter, but to a point, and then it becomes a legal matter. You need to pay attention to that.
But my point is, let's say you have a negative relationship with someone that comes before us.
Yeah, same thing.
I think that you should disclose that you have a relationship of some sort, not just try to push the deal down.
You need to recognize, and this is human nature. I don't like, trying to think of something I don't like to eat. You can look at me and tell them not many things like that. I don't like banana flavored things. All right. That's a strong dislike I have. And it matters. Yes, it's a personal thing. It doesn't meet a legal standard, but I would submit to you it's the right thing to do. It's that simple.
My other piece is in regards to if we're getting advice from, let's say, Artie. He says, and Artie has a financial gain from this going through, which I understand would not happen in this case, but I'm just using Artie as sort of a neutral person. But Artie's someone that is paid by the city and he's making recommendations to us. I think that if there's a financial benefit to someone who is making recommendations to us, that should be openly disclosed, that I will benefit X amount of dollars if this deal goes through.
If I could interject again, I apologize if I'm hogging this meeting, because I think y'all are right to have members participate, but I've been in politics before, believe it or not, and maybe that's why I'm not in it now. I like cutting to the chase. When you have a fiduciary, and the fiduciary is giving you advice, and that advice leads to him having to, or her having to charge a fee, you need to know it. But at the end of the day, the fiduciary cannot let that bias them. So in every transaction that BIDA has made, the fees are disclosed. I would also submit to you that in the dynamic that is BIDA, in the conduit nature that it is of like abatements, if Southeast Capital wants an abatement, that process it's a bond process that the law requires. It requires certain players. It requires a financial advisor. It requires a local counsel, legal counsel, requires a bond counsel. And it requires that the property owner, in this case, Southeast Capital, pay all the fees. So Leslie's right. If you're sitting there and you're trying to decide, well, do I want to give an abatement to Southeast Capital? And this is coming up eventually. And it matters to you whether or not somebody's going to make money on it or get paid a fee for handling it, then you have every right to know it. No question about it.
So
can we just, oh, I'm sorry.
I'll yield to you, Member Jefferson.
I was gonna ask is, can we create a internal control policy? I mean, my background is real estate. I submitted to all, letting him know that I'm not, the purpose of my appointment is not for financial gain. And if, as a realtor, affiliated agreement or affiliated relationship developer, I will recuse my vote. So for all the board members to submit a letter. Sure.
You were breaking up. I didn't understand the question.
Okay. So what I'm asking is it to submit a letter, all board members to Artie, stating that that you will disclose as well as your vote on any relationships or arrangements that you have of the developers or purchase and sell contracts that come before us to vote on?
This is handled different ways. Usually a duty is placed on the developer in a zoning application or in a development proposal as to whether or not they contributed money or dealt with a business deal over $500 with any member of any agency of the city. And I don't know if College Park has that. I've asked Winston 2 or 3 times, and I haven't gotten an answer to it. He may have responded to Artie, I don't know, but it would be perfectly proper to ask that question each meeting. It would be perfectly proper to require the applicant, if you will, the applicant to purchase, to declare that.
Well, Dan, this thing here, is it ethical for BIDA board members to receive money from developers that we work with? And if so, is there a certain threshold?
No, there's not a dollar threshold. There's a question, there's a difference. Now, I mentioned my setup a few minutes ago about there's a difference between I did business with Joe, some time ago, and now Joe wants to do business here. I disclose, and somebody brought this up in a question earlier about you should have disclosure. There's a difference between that and soliciting participation by somebody based on or through knowledge that you have because of your board position. There's a difference.
I want to respond to that in my situation. We had a developer that reached out to Artie who wanted to do some things to assist citizens in the city. I didn't go after them, but they did. I was connected to them by Artie, and that developer actually did make a donation to our nonprofit for a program that we were doing over the holidays. And now there wasn't any voting on the table for that, but I don't know if that's what Artie's asking. Because I know that it has to be disclosed. I know that it's something that my organization shouldn't be going after somebody based on my relationship with BIDA. But if something is brought to us, or if a developer reaches out to us, what my understanding is that I just need to disclose any funds. And of course, it wasn't coming to me. And we've had other persons doing business with the city, and they've had me sign letters saying that none of the funds that were received by our organization would be going towards me personally. So I don't know if that is one of the things that that you're mentioning, but I did want to respond to what Leslie was saying as well, that I guess the question on the table is, if we have an advisor to BIDA, this is what I'm just trying to understand, Leslie, if this is what you're asking. If we have somebody on BIDA, well, I'm just going to give Dan Lee for an example. And Dan, I'm just going to give an example. Okay, so Dan brings a project to us. And Dan is already going to receive whatever his fiduciary, whatever his fee is for if that project goes through. Can Dan receive money from the project itself, which has nothing to do with us? Is that what you were asking, Leslie? I don't know if that's.
So mine related more towards, oh gosh, I just blanked on his name.
I wasn't clear, in terms of
what's the financial, Ed Wall.
Ed
So
Wall.
in the refinancing of the bonds, it was being recommended by Ed that we refinance these bonds. And there was a $500,000 fee that Ed was going to get from the refinancing. I think that's something, there are many financial advisors that could have done that refinancing. Ed's not the only one. So to me, it's a conflict to recommend to do something where I'm going to make $500,000.
His bank made $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he didn't even he cut his fee on that too. So he didn't even receive $500,000 to my knowledge. It was the bank received, it was less than that. Artie, do you remember that? Do you recall that?
I don't think it matters about the amount. I think let's just make a point that if it seems to be incentivizing a certain particular advice from a contractor, from a fiduciary. And I don't know any other way to do it. It's like a realtor. You go hire a realtor.
Well,
and the realtor says, buy this house right here. I get a fee from it. It'd be different if it wasn't something in return. If it was he was getting it without any work or any participation. Same way with a lawyer. I don't necessarily give advice, you ought to go refinance this, but the work that is required to refinance, I make a fee off of it. And that is fully disclosed. That is a public record for the world to see. And a necessary element of the refinance.
So basically, in Ed's case, part of helping us do this restructuring, he had to seek out. I mean, that was, so not only is he the company that was doing the restructure or working with us on our end, but his responsibility was to go and help us find a bank or institution that would do this. So I saw that as kind of hand in hand in that case. It's like we need water and, so everybody needs to drink. So
The difference is,
Oh,
Dan, that in a realtor, you don't pay them up front. We're paying Ed for his advice. He's getting paid for the work he's doing, for finding the bank, SunTrust, all the banks that he went, he's getting paid for his time. Then on the back end, he's also getting paid again from the deal going through. He would get paid for his time whether we approved it or not. A realtor would not be
understand.
getting paid for their time.
I
if
understand,
the
and
deal
it's a
didn't go
legitimate,
through.
it's a legitimate question
Mhm.
that he gives advice to do something, and that's something that you agree to do, following his advice gets him another fee. I understand the question.
Mhm.
It's been asked. You're not the only person to have asked this in the history of bond refinancing. I understand it very much. I just want to tell you that that is the process that has been recognized for years. It's a legitimate question. I get it. And it's fully disclosed.
It's legal and ethical. Is that what you're saying to us? I think because that's kind of the question. Is that
It's legal, it's ethical, it's required. I mean, and Leslie's saying that maybe you ought to shop it around each time. I think that's what you said, that there are other
I think
folks
at the
that do
very
it.
least, it should be openly disclosed. That's the
It's
first
openly
thing, not just
disclosed.
be a line item amidst 100 line items that, are very obscure. That's the
It's
first thing, but should it be shopped around? I do think it should be shopped around.
Well, again, in this case, that refinancing of the city's debt was paid by the city. Back to our discussion earlier, you're all one big happy family, and it's all coming out of one pot. So it's everybody's money, but it is fully disclosed. It has to be.
okay? So I guess, I don't know if we're going to come to a conclusion today, but we definitely have had a discussion in terms of clarifying the role of the board. I think Attorney Lee has helped us to understand a little bit more about who we are and what we're here for. But also we put in this first item was to develop a consensus on how the board can best serve College Park. Do you feel like we have reached that?
I feel comfortable.
I guess I still don't know either in terms of what it is or a process for finding out where the synchronicity is between College Park vision, goals, economic development, Artie. What's the coordinated plan, if there is one, and what comes before us at each meeting in terms of parcels and what the intended use is, and does that fit the plan or not fit the plan, or bring in problems or solve problems. And maybe that's too concrete. Maybe we need to just go ahead and keep on making decision by decision. But I really would like to know, and maybe Artie, that's a presentation I'm asking you in your other hat or other role to help us to know a little bit more about. And maybe if I attended more city council meetings, I would hear these discussions on council. So if that's what I need to do, I'll do it. But it just feels like it should be more simple than that. It should be more straightforward. That somebody ought to know. Do we want more hotels? Do we want fewer hotels? Do we want more restaurants? Do we want to attract a core business? We've got 6 West, is property moving? What I'm feeling like I'm just yes, no, or indifferent.
Right. Well, I think with your question, like all the questions that you just rambled off, I have an answer for each one of them.
Well, good. That's encouraging.
And and I guess it's second nature to me because I live, breathe, and eat it every day. But because I know the answers, I'm probably about 85%. It may not be city council's answer.
Got it.
To the same question. Do we need more hotels? Probably not, but I like some more hotels. Probably so, because I know they bring in a lot of tax revenue.
And I guess I'm talking about the 50-foot view,
Yeah,
livability, what constitutes livability that is already right here at our fingertips. And please forgive, I have to censor myself sometimes. My comments about Woodward, it's a wonderful place. I wish I could send my granddaughter there. I wish I could teach there. However, you know, it's just that overarching sense of what place does it fill in our community. So I take everything back.
Well, I think one of the goals and another trip that I would like to have the BIDA board and maybe the city council to participate in is I want to go to College Park South Side also to take you on a tour. Lots of times when I show developers College Park, you know, I may not go that far because I have a strategic area that I'm trying to get them to locate in until I can get other areas stabilized, cleaned up, and in better position where they will risk $5 million, $10 million, a $30 million investment. But my goal is to bring all the ships up at the same time. And what we're doing now, you know, 6 West is going to come up with me here or with me somewhere else. It's going to come up. But the real challenge is to be able to strengthen those weakest links in the community, the families,
Right.
the housing stock, the jobs that are available, the cleanliness, the activities that are going on in those areas. That's where a lot of my focus is right now. But at the same time, you know, if we live in Ward 1, we live in Ward 3, we may not see a lot of those, you know, Ward 4, we may not see a lot of that, a lot of kind of the things that I'm talking about, but we know it exists. So I think that would be a start. I think the more we hang together, the more we talk with each other, we'll become of the same mind and the same goals. I think that we as a group, a lot of times we don't see eye to eye about things, but then later I will look back at what we were arguing about or disagreeing about, and I will see that we probably all had the same goal, but we just have different ways of getting there. And that's what we can't understand because of all of our different backgrounds. So it won't happen overnight. It definitely won't be solved tonight. But I think that, I guess the next step would be for us to take that tour and where we're actually going to get out of the vehicle and we're going to walk around and we're really going to see a lot of what's going on. It's amazing what you can see when you walk around versus driving around. Like I said, I'll get that set up sometime soon.
And let me just point out here that Artie's, the people that are under Artie's direction are working an awful lot to try to straighten up some of the areas that are, well, they're horrible.
Underperforming.
I went into an apartment the other day and there were holes. There was people that were living there with sewage coming out of the apartment below them. When they tell you that they put their child to bed at night and in the middle of the night they see a rat go across the bed and they have to move them to a couch, we need to do something about that. And we are doing something about that. And Artie's people are just, I mean, they're spearheading this thing and they're not going to do business. We're going to shut them down. You know, we are looking at the legal aspects of it and we'll be shutting some down. But there's also in that same area a huge facility. And I don't know if you want to talk about that out on West Fayetteville Road that's coming in. That's going to be fantastic. It's going to bring in a lot of new multifamily homes. It's going to bring a lot of townhomes right next to the Clayton County School. It's going to help develop that area. So the more we talk as a group, the more we open up to each other as a group, what we're looking for, what the city's looking for, what we're all looking for, what we all want to see. I don't want to see any more trucking coming down Main Street. I don't want to, there's a lot of different things that are out there but the more we talk and the more we discuss things, the better we come together as a group. And that's what I like to see. There's a lot of new people here with a lot of new ideas, a lot of great ideas. So I think it's great. I think the mayor and I, as part of this board, need to kind of tell you when it came to us, this was some of our thoughts. So then you can understand as well. I would never tell the person in my ward, Anita, how to vote. I would never, ever do that. I would never tell anybody else how to do that. I think we've got some great people and all of you can make a decision on your own. So I'm just glad we had this discussion. I think it's good.
I think, yeah, I agree with you. And I'm going to acknowledge Member Zen. I want to just say that we have a great group of people here, but we are a new board. We're a new board. Most everyone on this board is, well, I think half of our board is less than 6 months. So 7 or 8 months. So we're learning, we're going to grow together. And this has been good. This has been some good discourse. So Leslie, I just want to turn it back to you.
Yeah, I just want to ask a question. When I was out running this morning, and I really am way more excited about 6 West now that you can see more of it clearing up. I was really trying to think who I might know that might be interested in developing down here. But then I started thinking back to we don't talk to developers. So I'd like some clarification. Yep.
Yes.
Tell Artie.
Yeah.
Tell Artie.
I think it's overkill when you feel that you can't talk to a developer. I feel that it is very, there's one thing to be cordial. There's one thing to say, hey, yeah, contact Artie about it. There's one thing to say, okay, yeah, get me the information and I'll get it to Artie and then he'll get it to the rest of the group.
Sharing.
Don't feel that you have to push the brakes and not form relationships. All I do all day long is form relationships. If I wasn't a good relationship person, I would be a terrible salesman and I would not get anything sold. So the board itself isn't an extension of what it is that I do. You guys also sell the community. You talk to people about the demographics. If somebody says, oh, College Park has a whole lot of crime, you are the ones that go up there and you dispute that information. So don't feel that you can't talk to the developers. And if you need my business cards, just keep them with you. And if somebody's interested in College Park, you can give them a business card. And that if that makes you feel comfortable, that's okay also. But don't feel that, oh, I can't talk to you and hang up the phone. One of the goals that was from the strategic planning session was that developers said that they felt that College Park was not business friendly. You guys remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
By not talking to people? I would say, yep, that really.
I'm talking about actually going to solicit developers, like me call them, not them call me.
That's fine. That's fine. There's no problem with you reaching out. If you don't have an interest yourself, as Dan Lee said earlier, if you do not stand to benefit yourself, then feel free to reach out to them and have them to contact me. Please do that. Don't push the brakes. Go out and reach out. It's a lot easier for you to talk to a person that trusts you to refer them to College Park than me going out, making a cold call and thinking that they're going to come to College Park. It goes a lot.
Share it with the group later on.
Share it, right. You just share it with the group, but a lot of trying to identify developers to come to the city is different than a developer that has a project on the table and is already, that may be a little bit.
Leslie's scenario of reaching out to somebody she may know in her vast business.
I think that's fine. I mean, in my book, that's fine.
For the purpose of helping BIDA is different than a relationship you might try to have otherwise.
That's right.
That's different.
I mean, Leslie mentioning that I'm going to do. I mean, I think this is something that, I think it's a great idea in terms of us championing, being on BIDA. but, you know, also looking to identify developments and projects that can come to the city. I think that is also, that's kind of like a part of our role, you know, but we just have to know, I think you just have to know where you draw the line. And that, you know, by the time you start talking about the project, we need to turn them over to Artie. I mean, that's what I would do. I mean, but yeah. So, okay, so at this point, this was not an action item, I guess, because we didn't have anything specifically to take. We could have made some action items from it, but this was just really a good discussion. And I think what I'm hearing from many of you is that we want to keep the conversation going. And as we continue to meet, and if Artie, if you will set up that next tour for us so we can go see the South Side. These are also good opportunities when we're riding together to get to know each other. We've been in COVID and it's been very, very impersonal. And so even being able to bond together has been challenging, but I believe we're on the right road. So if there aren't any more discussion on the item A, members in?
Oh, no.
Okay. If there aren't any, then we're going to just move on to our second item, which is simply a discussion of creating an agenda and as a group engage in education and training, retraining, on real estate and development opportunities, issues and strategies, which I think some of what we talked about in the last time. Financial tools are available through BIDA. This is just some of the things, monthly educational series. So basically, this is really for us to discuss training, training and just some other ways that we can be creative with some strategies to even, you know, to promote what we're doing, but also to help promote our city. So I know some of you had some questions that you wanted to have addressed or comments, so I'm going to turn it into the hands of our board members.
I feel like my questions about the relationship to the city of College Park of the BIDA board have been addressed as far as they can be at this point, and I'd like to see us move on to some of the other key points from the strategic planning meeting in either a similar discussion to this one or some time set aside at our regular board meetings to continue our sort of clarification as a group.
So are you saying, so you're saying that you, I mean, is now, this is the board's pleasure. Do we want to continue with this conversation or pick it up? Is that what you're saying, Anita?
I say we set another, that we look at our list from the strategic meeting and identify another core content area that we had some questions about. And one of them was training, I think, right? So yeah. I'm not sure. For me, anything related to financial kinds of things would be important, the whole bond issue, that kind of thing. But I don't know. I think
so basically, are you saying just to contain this discussion just to training and retraining at this point, which probably won't take too long? Is that what you're? I mean, that's what's on the agenda. So. And
I'm saying I don't know what is the next topic, broad topic of training that we might want to engage in as a core group. And do we want to use this format of an hour or two set aside outside of a regular meeting time or not?
This, I guess, question is for Dan as well as Artie, meaning I do believe that we want to have some additional training sessions. I believe that we want to continue to revisit some of the things that we discussed in the strategic retreat. We can't solve all the problems of the world in one meeting. And we can't get all the answers, but how do we, go ahead, Celissa, I was just going to finish, Celissa, how do we continue this discussion? Do we just continue it through setting aside time in our general regular session meetings, or do we continue to have workshops? That doesn't have to be answered right now. Let's just Celissa Jefferson and then.
No, I was just going to add, I would like to see, not necessarily, I would like to see the training, but in addition to have other cities present to us some of the things that they are working on so that we can maybe, into brand partnering. And I just feel that City of College Park loses a lot, don't kind of work around or with our, adjacent neighbors, how their brand partnering development works. And I don't know if it can come from state or if it has to come from, a nearby other development board that functions similar to, but to, just to build those relationships and that rapport with our adjacent projects.
I want to reply to you real quick because basically, I think what I'm hearing you say is that you'd like for us to do some training that involved and even networking with other developmental authorities. And
Yes.
so Artie, the question on that for you is, okay, so I did submit a request a few days ago to see if our members could attend the next JIDA meeting, which is locally here in Atlanta. It's going to be at Ponce City Market. It's just a morning meeting. And I was looking at that as not just training, but a networking session so that we could, as a board, begin to meet with other authorities and start hearing what they're doing in their cities as we're working on, further defining ourselves. But if that's not the type of event that we should go to, then I guess that can be changed. But I think it would be good for us to do some things that involve, for instance, when our board members go through your developmental authority training, well, actually, you're not going to do it because it's going to be virtual. So I guess you won't really have a chance to meet too many people but when we used to have the in-person meetings at UGA, you would actually get to talk to persons who are involved in their development authority and, just ask questions. So I just want to know, I guess, how can we facilitate that networking with others as well as any ongoing training that we can do here during our meetings?
Okay. As far as the JIDA meetings are concerned, when I got your email earlier today, I didn't know it was a JIDA meeting. I thought it was like a JIDA conference that was here in March. And I was thinking of a conference. I said, well, that's a lot of money. I said, we don't have money for that. So I automatically said there's nothing in the budget, but JIDA meetings are about $50 a pop. So that's not as much of an issue as far as the networking and things of that nature. But when I'm talking about when we're looking at an expenditure of $600, $700, $800 plus room and board, that is substantial. That's a huge chunk. So if the board's interested in attending those type of meetings, let me know. I know that I happen to be a member of JIDA, but I don't think you guys are a member. So they have a member price and a non-member price, but even the non-member price is only like $20 more. To become a member of JIDA, you have to pay like $400 or $500 for a year. So that's on top of the conference. That's on top of the room and board and everything. So, but no, there's not a problem there. But I just needed some specifics. I just heard JIDA in March or April, and for some reason in my mind it said conference, but it may not have been in that email that you sent me.
Well, thank you, because I just didn't know, I just wanted to clarification. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. So, I mean, that is one way for us to network and to also it is training because you're learning. But then we can, as a board, determine, just letting me and Artie know that you would like to include it in the agenda to us to set aside an agenda item that we could do this without having to have a special called meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I'd like to give feedback on that also. I would rather have a set period of time for a training during a regular board meeting as opposed to these special meetings, because I'm limited. I can't, I was about to call out today and say I'm not available because I had some family things to take care of. I had a sick child, but I made it here anyway. So if we say we want to set aside 30 minutes every board meeting for some type of training, and if a BIDA board member would like to head up whatever that training was, And I'm not saying that you would actually facilitate by doing it. You might find the speaker. You might find the individual. You might find a person in another community that you wanted to come in to share something with College Park that you wanted them to have a, I guess, to be exposed to. I think that that would be a great way to cover all the bases of what everyone might want to see and be educated more in what's going on outside of the city of College Park.
Awesome. That's great. So I don't know if we don't need to vote on that. We just have consensus. I believe that this is something that I saw head shaking like that everybody was interested. So let's begin that. We have our next BIDA board meeting the second Thursday in March. And if there is someone that has something that we would like to bring, just please reach out to myself or Artie and let us know. And I would like for us to, if we can do it in advance rather than having to add it to the agenda at the meeting, so that at least we could kind of plan accordingly. So, but of course, we can add it on to the agenda as an addition as well at a meeting. Yeah.
What I will do is I'm going to have Sabrina to send an email out, and she's going to solicit from the BIDA board members the topics that you would like to have covered. And if you know someone that can cover that topic, provide that information to her, Sabrina can reach out and we can get it set up so that at the board meeting, we have time set aside and it's already on the agenda and all the supporting documentation is there so that we can kind of move it forward and it's not kind of a surprise, a surprise training, so that we can make sure to cover all the things that you guys feel that, would be beneficial. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a training. It can just be being exposed to a new program or something that another community is doing, or just, there's somebody out there that's doing something that's cool that you want the entire board to be exposed to it.
Cool. So does anybody have anything else you want to discuss in training or retraining? If not, we're going to move on to item C, which let me give you a chance to answer that before I move on to item C. Are there any other questions or comments on this? Okay. Councilman Allen mentioned that we add this onto the agenda, item C, which was a discussion of, one, we need to determine whether we're going to go to in-person meetings. I know that the council, as of March 1st, the beginning of March, their first March meeting will be held in person. So that's something and I kind of think that we may have not much of a choice but to follow them, but also kind of right now to decide if this is what the direction we want to move in. And then also in the past, when we had BIDA meetings, we would normally hold them at the GICC and we would provide a full spread meal. And that is a cost factor. So I think that at this point, I'm going to turn it into the hands of our Mayor Pro Tem.
I just wanted to bring up the fact that, I would much rather already spend the money on training or on getting some land disturbances and surveys rather than spending a lot of money for meals for BIDA board members. And I didn't know what was available, where was available to have it, GICC or any other location that's cheaper. But, and I'm just speaking for myself. Gosh, and when we meet in person, I'm happy with a water or Coke and some crackers or chips or something like that. I don't need to have a full meal. I can eat before I come. So just didn't know anybody else's thoughts on the same thing.
I do have a question for Artie. I don't know if you have this because we didn't tell you in advance, but approximately how much were we spending on the in-person meals at the GICC? Any kind of ballpoint figure?
It was anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500. And that was with the space being free. And the thing is that whenever you are at the GICC, you have to use proof from the pudding, and then they have set fees. I was thinking that at the public safety complex, in that public safety room, there's 2 screens there. There's adequate space where people can be spread out. If we wanted to have some Subway sandwiches and some chips and drinks on the back for anybody that was available, that showed up, that could be available, and we could do it for very, very low to no cost. And at the same time, it's a lot closer to the residents. The GICC is it's a great facility, but it's kind of on an island by itself right now. But if we have it over at the public safety complex, people can ride bikes there, they can drive there, they can sit down, feel that they can interface more with, you as a BIDA board, as well as staff, and they can actively participate. It's been some time since anyone other than the people that were actually involved on the BIDA board or making a presentation have been at a meeting. They're on, Facebook right now, I guess. It's being streamed by Mr. Hammond. So that's my suggestion. At the same time, we would use local businesses for the food. We can get some people involved that haven't, historically been involved in the past in these meetings. But that's just a suggestion. But I know the facility is free so long as there's nothing major going on with the police and fire department. It's just that I have to go ahead, and what I would do is I would go and book all of the second Thursdays of each month for the entire year to make sure we had them. And in the event that something came up, I would find an alternative location, like maybe City Hall, for a meeting.
And we have had BIDA meetings at City Hall. We've had executive session meetings so Arnie, so basically now if we go to live meetings, will we still be live streaming the meetings on Facebook, or will that end? How does that work?
Technically, I would think that they would not be live streamed, but we would want to give everybody a heads up that it was not going to be live streamed in the future, so that they would know to actually show up. So we would probably go a little bit above and beyond and go to social media to let everyone know that meetings in the future from this point forward, unless we say different, are going to be held at, the public safety complex on the second Thursday of each month, so that people ahead of time can go ahead and make arrangements to be at the meeting. That's just a suggestion, but we would be meeting the letter of the law in making sure it was open to the public. I know some people probably still won't feel as comfortable coming out to the meetings. And maybe it's a possibility that we might still be able to have it live stream. I just need to make sure it falls within budget.
Okay. So I would like to ask the board members what your pleasure is. There's been two things that we kind of are discussing here. One is, I guess the first is returning to, returning, some of us it'll be the first time, but having in-person meetings, and okay, that's one. Returning to in-person meeting is the first thing. So Dan, do we need to take a vote on this? Do we need a motion?
No question about it. The law changed this last, not the current legislature, but the one before that. We didn't, I think it's interesting, we didn't have any law covering this, but now there's a code section that specifically says that if you want to continue virtually, you have to declare that you think it is a matter of public health and safety that you have virtual meetings. If you can't declare that, then you have to go back to a in-person meeting. So yes, you need a vote. You actually need a vote one way or the other,
Right.
in my opinion.
Okay,
So a decision of the body would decide it.
Okay, so is there a motion on the floor regarding where we go from here? I'm not gonna state the motion. I'm gonna see what motion you'd like to bring forth in terms of, do you want to continue virtually or do we return? So we just need somebody to bring that motion, whatever it may be.
I make a motion to move the meeting to in-person and reduce the food or dinner, reduce it to snacks or, something that's very affordable.
I think that we should take two different motions about this, like the first motion, and you can correct me, Attorney Lee, should we have a separate motion on the floor for
There's
return?
no right or wrong in it. If the-
Oh, so we can include the
If
food
Member
piece.
Jefferson wants to make a motion, she can make a motion. to-
Okay, then fine. Then
She can add cloud control to it.
okay, then I didn't know if we had to do two things. Okay, so go ahead with, so your motion is,
My motion is to move to in-person. We don't have to define location, right? Because they
right,
determine that availability. So I make a motion to move to in-person for BIDA, as well as to reduce the food budget consumption for the meeting.
okay, is there anyone that would like to second that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, well, the motion is to, the motion on the floor is that we return to in-person meetings and we find a way to cut costs on the food. Those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, it is unanimous for our members. Okay, guys, we get to be in person and save some money. I do like the idea, just the comment since the vote is done. I did like the idea of even supporting local businesses. And we've got, but whatever we do, just to make sure you have a vegan option as well for our beloved Leslie Zinn. So just make sure they know that, so I think chips are always vegan too. I mean, yeah, most of them are. So anyway, we're not going to be particular, Artie, about that. But if you would like to get some of us involved in determining where some of those foods will come from, we would love to be involved. So, okay. So I don't have anything else. Are there any? I think this kind of ends our meeting for today.
We don't need to vote on anything.
Say that again, sir.
We don't need to vote on anything else.
Okay, we don't need to vote on anything. The only thing we can vote on is to take a motion from the floor to adjourn this meeting today.
So moved.
Okay.
Okay.
Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Raise your hand. All right, everybody have a beautiful rest of your week and all that jazz. And thank you again for attending. Okay, have a great
Good
night.
evening, everyone.
Thank you, Attorney Lee. We really
you.
needed your help today.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Artie. Okay, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.